Let's see if the recording started, isn't it? All right, started.
All right, guys, you can begin.
Good morning, sir, and welcome all to our presentation today on leadership, power, and influence. While these are very familiar terms, especially at this stage of the MGPS associate degree, we will try to encourage you to apply the concepts in this lesson in your execution as powerful, influential leaders emerging from this program in your various units. Before I continue, I apologize. You all know I live by the roadside, so you'll be hearing a lot of traffic noises in the background. For the next few minutes, it is our goal in the end that you can use power and politics to help accomplish important organizational goals, practice aspects of charismatic leadership by pursuing a vision, apply the concepts that distinguish transformational from transactional leadership, identify types and sources of power in organizations, and know how to increase power through political activity, and use the influence tactics of rational persuasion, friendliness, reciprocity, developing allies, direct appeal, and scarcity. In the first segment of today's course, we want to hammer in the appreciation that a blend of transformational and charismatic leadership has a positive impact on follower development and follower performance. We can even argue that they are more effective than other leadership styles. Let us dive in. One of the key characteristics of both charismatic and transformational leadership is that they are mainly based on the strength of the leader's personal power rather than a position of authority granted by an organization. We are all familiar with the power invested in the senior officers, yet there's always a junior man who seems to be able to command the unit's attention with ease. That's a simple example of the difference between position and personal power. Many great minds of famous theorists, psychologists, and researchers have shown interest and developed the leadership theories we have studied so far in this program. Today, we must mention James McGregor Burns, a historian and scientist who first introduced the concept of transformational leaders. He proposed that these leaders inspire positive changes in those led and are invested in the success of every member involved in the process. Let's talk about Steve Jobs. No, Jeff Bezos, if I pronounce his name properly. Now, let's use Barack Obama as an example. He is known for running the White House. He encouraged everyone who worked for him to be open-minded about change and positive about self-improvement. He used that strategy to create an innovative team of leaders as a catalyst for changes in America. One way to understand transformational leadership is to compare it to transactional leadership because they are often mixed up. Transactional leadership is a transaction between leaders and followers. Who can identify that last character loaded onto the slide here? Class, anybody? Anybody have an idea who this person is? I'll give you a clue. He was an American psychologist who influenced others with his theories. Well, as most of them did that. Anybody familiar with this face? I'll help you. Abraham Maslow. And I will use his hierarchy of needs model to illustrate the difference between transformational and transactional leaders. The transactional leader recognizes followers' needs and desires and then clarify how those needs and desires will be satisfied in exchange for meeting specified objectives or performing specific duties. Thus, followers receive rewards for job performance and leaders benefit from completed tasks. Transformational leadership, on the other hand, rather than analyzing and controlling specific transactions with followers using rules, directions, and incentives, transformational leadership focuses on intangible qualities such as vision, shared values, and ideas to build relationships and give more significant meaning to separate activities and provide common ground to enlist followers in the change process. Transformational leadership is based on the leader's values, beliefs, and qualities rather than an exchange between leaders and followers. In short, transactional leaders negotiate with the lower level physiological needs, whereas transformational leaders elevate followers to the higher levels of psychological needs. As I just sent you on WhatsApp, some questions for introspection on how you behave in leadership situations. It's a good activity, it's a good quiz to do after today's class. Be reminded that as a leader, you can act like a transformational leader by rallying people around an inspiring vision, expressing optimism about the future, helping followers develop their potential, and empowering people to make change happen. But how does charismatic leadership blend with transformational leadership? As a leader, charismatic leader, you can use aspects of charismatic leadership by articulating a vision, making personal sacrifices to help achieve it, and appealing to people's emotion more than to their minds. Expand your charismatic potential by pursuing activities that you genuinely love. You see, charismatic leaders can communicate complex ideas and goals in straightforward, compelling ways so that everyone, from the vice president to the janitor, can understand and identify their message. Who is the father of charismatic leadership? We will talk about Max Weber in a minute. These are some points on charismatic leadership. They are strong and inspirational. They use unconventional means. They are counter-normative. And they transcend position, personal power based on expertise and respect and admiration for the leader. Max Weber is a prominent sociologist who developed the charismatic leadership theory or style. He believes that charismatic leaders are individuals who use their personality and communication style to gain the admiration of followers, who rely on their confidence to build and maintain a following. Now, these are good things, but too much confidence is problematic. So I urge you to respect, to observe, to pay attention to that delicate balance between compelling and destructive charisma. Before we get into the black art of charisma, I sent you another quiz that will help you determine if you have the potential to be a charismatic leader, sorry. I just want you all to observe the difference between efficient and destructive charisma, because your charisma can be a blessing and a curse. It can be a curse if it is used for self-serving purposes, which leads to deception, manipulation, and exploitation of others. Guys, don't be like these guys. Next in our course outline is power, influence, and leadership. I'll hand over to Alicia Alexander Scott.
Good morning, sir, fellow colleagues. I'm Alicia Alexander Scott, who will now lead the charge of the power, influence, and leadership section, along with the source of power in the leadership of organization. As a leader, you can expand your personal power by developing good relationships and acquiring advanced knowledge and experience. You can use power to gain the commitment of others to achieve such vision. You could also use position power when appropriate, but please don't overdo it. Within any organization, all leaders use their power to influence people to accomplish their goals with the desired outcome of becoming the power holder. However, having such influence that affects a person's actions, attitudes, values, beliefs, and even movement of how other people may permit. Power could alter reality. In this study of leadership, there are 5 fundamental concepts known best for power that associates with a leader's position and personal qualities. They are coercive power, reward power, legit power, reference power, and expert power. Coercive power. This is a negative side of legitimate and reward power, but yet it is the opposite of the reward. A manager can force an employee to follow an order by threatening the employees with punishment if the employees do not comply with the order. The most important concept to understand about coercive power is that it is use of the application of force seeking to compel behavior rather than to influence behavior through persuasion. Reward power. This power is when a manager gives some reward to an employee to influence the employees to act, which can be tangible or intangible. As we move along to legitimate power, in leadership, legitimate power is essential for any management role based upon perception and reality in the formal position or an office held in the organization hierarchy of authority. The fact as the individual holds a particular role in an organization and the perception for the employees that someone holding the position has the power to exert control over them. Reference power. As a leader, it is crucial to lead by an example. Hence, when leaders' standards are set and their demeanors are pleasant, people who work with them will want to emulate their behavior. It is a form of reverence gained by a leader who has strong interpersonal relational skills. Expert power. Now, this power is where the manager has the exceptional knowledge, expertise, and the ability. The subordinates will likely go for advice, go along with any recommendation made, and follow their leads when a leader is a true expert. However, within the results of the use of power, there are 3 such distinct outcomes identified as resistance, compliance, and commitment. Resistance will occur when employees deliberately avoid carrying out any instructions. They may even attempt to disobey the order. But yet still, the effectiveness of the leader who will rely solely on the position of the power is limited mainly to coercive force. However, with compliance, it is where people follow the directions of the person with the power, obey their orders, and carry out the instructions even though they may not agree. Yet, the effective use of this position power generally leads to compliance followers in the excessive use of legitimate, expert, and reward management. Nevertheless, for commitment, followers will adopt the leader's viewpoint and enthusiastically carry out their instructions, which often generates followers' position by personal power of expert and reference. However, one must understand that power comes from dependency to understand such. A key aspect to power is dependency that is related to a person's controls over the resources. A causal relationship between power and dependency is how leverage creates support and vice versa. Dependence is most extraordinary for significant resources which are inadequate and have no ready available substitutes. Hence, it is a crucial element underlining relevance power, relative power, as the number and strength of dependencies are also important. Leaders may use various influence tactics that fall within the broad category based on general principles for a certain influence as power is acquired, developed, and exercised. As we step into the source of leader power in the organization, I am sure we are all aware that knowledge is power. And as a leader, when you gather and distribute your information, it is where the control source of energy may derive. As a leader, you can gain power by helping the organization deal with strategic contingencies. You can use information to shape decisions and actions. Strive to become involved in the central activities of the organization and stay alert to ways you can help the organization cope with critical uncertainties. The strategic contingencies theory identified that the power source do not link to a specific person or position from exploring the 5 types of power. Earlier in the topic, still, the functional role the leaders play in the organizations is overall. As you can see in the diagram below, you have the source of power, which is linked with the contingencies of the power that influence over the organizational outcome. However, as a manager using a strategic contingency, you will realize how gaining power can help the organization by using such information to shape decision and action. There are additional sources of power and influence that have been identified, such as interdepartmental dependency, the ability of alternative resources by controlling the task, controlling the knowledge, controlling labor, and differentiation. It also includes control over information that relates to formal communication network, common in central structure, and seeks to legitimate power. We have centrality that is functioning on how many others will be affected by you and how quickly as well. Coping with uncertainty. This gives a subunit power of absorption, forecasting, and prevention. Even though we are dealing with change differently, first and foremost, we need to acknowledge the discrepancy and think about how it can best serve one another in dealing with the unexpected and coping in the best way achievable. Accepting that the unexpected happens, it is a significant trait in people who are more resilient to change. It is a role in life that is all around us, never more than so than today. Now I'll pass you back on to Nora to share the power through political activities.
Another aspect of power is that it isn't enough to perform main activities or cope with organizational uncertainties. One's effort must also be recognized as necessary by others. People who want to increase their power make sure their activities are visible and appreciated. Acquiring and using power is essentially a political process. I want to share a little experience about a fellow officer who tried to dismantle strategic training initiatives before the ministry got these helicopters. In his opinion, we were spending far too much money on training, and he made every effort to circumvent the program. He would have succeeded if he had political savvy. He didn't understand the politics of the day. He didn't try to understand the needs and viewpoints of those affected by the training implementation and to influence them to act in ways to support his agenda. As a leader, you can use political activity to achieve important organizational goals. When there is uncertainty or disagreement about choices, you can develop connections with powerful people by volunteering for difficult projects and serving on committees. Uncertainty and conflict are natural in organizations, and politics is the mechanisms for accomplishing these things that cannot be handled through purely formal policies or position power. That last statement I read on the slide, you can develop connections with powerful people by volunteering. You all familiar with this phrase, friends in higher places? Yes. This is when lower level leaders they are in that framework where they have friends in higher places. When they refer to these people, their power as a lower level leader naturally increases. There are 3 strategies for thriving as a leader. Think politically. Leaders cannot get anything done unless they create and nurture networks of people that they can call on and work with to accomplish goals, as in the case of having friends in higher places. Manage conflict. People learn and grow only when encountering ideas that challenge their own experiences and assumptions. And the last one is keep your hunger in check. A lust for power becomes an end in itself. It is distracting. It distracts a leader's attention from organizational needs and goals. I want to share a quote from a book called Leadership on the Line. To lead is to live dangerously, because when leadership counts, when you lead people to difficult change, you challenge what people hold dear, their daily habits, tools, loyalties, and ways of thinking, with nothing more to offer perhaps than a possibility. Another political approach is called impression management, which means people seek to control how others perceive them, often creating an impression of greater power and helping them gain more power. The impact you have when you walk into a room, a collection of subtle visual cues, including everything from how your clothes fit to how you walk. These are things you use to manage your impression. Even subtle name dropping can give the impression that a leader associates with high status people. Flattery is another tool of impression management that can help a person appear perceptive and pleasant. I can tell you about a senior officer who forced himself to learn the terminology of younger folk and pretended to be efficient in using computers and smartphones just to impress the young officers. But in reality, he was intimidated by their bright young minds. But how did he control that perception, their perception of him? He arrogantly used this political tactic to avoid being seen as behind the times. In one instance, he quickly revised texts from our air legislation and then went and challenged young officers on their knowledge of the text he just revised. He wasn't even conversant much with the topic. Through this study, I understand his actions to be political tactics of impression management. Next, we have tactics for asserting leadership, and I hand you over to Kanisha Armstrong.
Thank you, Brent. As discussed previously in the earlier chapters, leadership is an influence relationship among leaders and followers who intend real changes and outcomes that reflect their shared purpose. Therefore, in this section of chapter 12, we will examine the tactics for asserting leaders' influence. As we may know, leaders use their power to implement decisions, facilitate change, and to pursue organizational goals. These accomplishments can be achieved through both skill and willingness. The examples of these skills are decisiveness, integrity, problem solving, dependability, and the ability to teach and mentor. And willingness is the willingness to lead people so that you as a leader, you are able to facilitate opportunities for others to learn, identify, and to commit. Now, the word influence tends to appear several times in the text. As such, just as a reminder on what is influence, according to the Britannica website, influence is the power to change or to affect someone or something to cause changes without force. Now, there are different types of influence. One of these influence include the social influence. Now, social influence involves intentional and unintentional efforts to change an individual's thoughts, feelings, or behaviors caused by other people who may be actually present or whose presence is imagined, expected, or simply implied. An example of a social influencing leader is Miss Oprah Winfrey. She is known to have a massive fan base all over the world because of her ability to connect with her audience. This connection builds a loyal fan base, which enables her to be powerful and influential. Can anyone think of a leader who can be labeled as a social influencer? On the other hand, yes? Anyone?
I said Rihanna.
Yes, that singer, indeed. Thank you. On the other hand, not all power moves are accepted by the followers, especially when it seems to be self-serving. Moreover, leaders have to focus on the target groups, individuals, and positions to determine the best approach for using their power. Notably, leaders can use a combination of influence tactics to get these results. Now, according to the author Richard DAFT, there are 7 tactics that can be used. 1, use of rational persuasion, make people like you, rely on the rule of reciprocity, develop allies, ask for what you want, remember the principle of scarcity, and extend formal authority with expertise and credibility. Now let's examine each one. Now, rational persuasion is used by utilizing facts, data, and logical argument persuasion on others to complete a task or a desired goal. It is most effective when a leader has the technical knowledge and expertise retailed to the issue. Now, an example of rational persuasion by a leader is by the acting commissioner of police. In his efforts to convince the citizens that the mandate to remove guns from the streets and to maintain public safety, the commissioner reported the number of legal firearms and ammunition that was seized during the Operation Strike Back during a cross-country exercise. Now, this data was revealed to encourage the officers to continue to work hard and to remind the citizens of the TTPS efforts and commitment to meet their target numbers. As a leader, using rational persuasion helps followers to get a sense of trustworthiness, loyalty, and to have confidence in the authority figure representing their needs. Now, friendliness and interpersonal skills can provide advantage for making someone say yes. It is a positive impact we can leave on others when we demonstrate care and support for others. And that could simply be listening more, asking questions, going for a laugh, showing care and respect and consideration, and admitting to not knowing everything and to give your time. The next point is to rely on the rule of reciprocity. Leaders who do favors for others can expect others to do favor for them in return. Now, simply put, when you do something for others, they often feel obligated to do something for you in return. Regardless of the favor, it is the simplest and fastest way for someone to keep you in mind. Next point is developing allies. Now, allies allow for a strong relationship with other people, groups, or countries for mutual benefit or to achieve some common purpose. So, for example, the alliance between the United States and Trinidad and Tobago, where there is focus on increasing investment, trade, and stable supplies of energy, is a typical example of relationship bonding. The next point is know what you want. As a leader, it is important to be clear and precise about what you want to achieve. The desired outcome can be met if the leader's vision and goals are made explicit so that the organization can respond accordingly. Moreover, persons will have a greater understanding and appreciation of their roles and responsibilities in the mission. Another point is the principle of scarcity. Now, scarcity is when something is in short supply or otherwise limited to a small quantity of some sort. Now, considering its definition, leaders can learn to frame their requests or offers in such a way as to highlight the unique benefits and exclusive information being provided. Some people like to feel important or a sense of belonging to a special group who has first-hand knowledge and information. Therefore, by disseminating information that is not broadly available, that supports leaders' ideas and proposals. Finally, extend formal authority with expertise and credibility. In pursuit to assert influence, leaders' use of legitimate authority can be used. With knowledge, credibility, and trustworthiness, one can exert greater influence than those who simply order others around. Competent leaders can do more to motivate and inspire people, which leads to an effective leader. Moreover, these 7 tactics for asserting influence heavily depends on personal than position with power. By understanding the importance of rational persuasion, liking and friendship, reciprocity, networks of alliance, direct appeal, and scarcity, leaders can extend their power and strengthen their influence on others. In light of the tactics to influence others, it will be unproductive to use influence in an unethical manner. As such, we must consider the ethics in using power and politics in organizations. When holding a leadership position, there is an opportunity to use power and influence to accomplish important organizational goals. But remember, power can also be abused. An example of how senior officers can abuse their power in my organization is on occasions when they engage in unethical practices. An example will be when junior officers are the custodian of, let's say, important keys to the supply room with equipment. There are situations when senior members deliberately bypass the issuing procedures of receiving the goods because they hold a senior rank. And as a junior person, despite knowing the proper procedures, in most cases will comply with the senior person's request. And this can also be because if they do not comply, it comes across as being disobedience to particular orders or even insubordination. Either way, the junior person can be subjected to receiving extra duties, being reported, or even being victimized. The challenge with this as well is that it is difficult to prove that the senior person is taking advantage because of the nature of the job is to follow orders. As such, the effects of this reality can be physical, psychological, and emotional. Leaders must keep in mind that ethical leadership has a significant impact on their followers, and they should always use their authority to set an example by which others can follow. Now, ethical conduct can sometimes have a gray area in which a person can believe they are seeking the well-being of others. However, using the leadership experience text by Richard DAFT, we can ask ourselves some simple questions to determine our motive. Firstly, is the action consistent with the organization's goals rather than being motivated purely by self-interest? As leaders, doing something primarily for the benefit and goodwill of others or groups shows that they are valued, appreciated, and your main purpose for taking action or representing them is to serve selflessly. Secondly, does the action respect the rights of individuals and groups affected by it? Now remember, respect is a two-way road. It is an important standard that leaders should set to earn acceptance by others. The basic rights of people should always be acknowledged to show a sense of morality, humility, and understanding for others' opinion in various situations. Thirdly, does the action meet the standards of fairness and equity? Now, fairness and equity tends to add a productive and positive environment. Fair and consistent treatment of employees in the workplace builds trust, enhances morale, and deepens loyalty. It encourages persons to collaborate socially and economically towards any goal and mission set out before them. And fourthly, would you wish others to behave in the same way if the action affected you? Now, there's a golden rule that says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In simple terms, treat others the way we want to be treated. As a leader, when making ethical decisions, you must consider the consequences of one's actions and how it affects the persons involved. Although these 4 questions can assist with ethical actions, there may be situations that may not be so clear-cut, and leaders may have difficulty differentiating ethical from unethical use of power. However, the most important point is for a leader is to have moral responsibility of having power and its use. The prime objective is to always serve others by being a figurehead for justice, or the voice for the voiceless, to achieve the goal and to benefit the entire organization. Now, this brings us to the end of our presentation. However, you would have been able to use the power. You should be able now to use power and politics to help accomplish important organizational goals, practice aspects of charismatic leadership by pursuing a vision, apply the concept that distinguishes transformational from transactional leadership, identify types and sources of power in organizations, and to use the influence tactics of rational persuasion, friendliness, reciprocity, developing allies, direct appeal, and scarcity. I'd like to thank you all for allowing us this time to present our presentation and for giving us your undivided attention. I will now invite any questions if there are any.
Okay, if there are no questions, I will stop the recording.